Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be going through layering with Prismacolor pencils, but I'll be using a technique that's quite different from what you are probably used to. It's a method I believe allows you to achieve an even more realistic result compared to the usual methods you've probably seen here on YouTube. Before we begin, if you are new to colored pencil art or perhaps an intermediate learner, you may want to check out my free guide on the basics of colored pencil art. Link will be in the description, more on that later. So here we have our outline done and we are going to start layering. In case you are new to colored pencil art, layering is simply shading colors one on top of the other in order to create depth and realism. Now there are a few concepts I need to explain before we begin. The first is the base layer. Now if you look at our reference image, you may be overwhelmed because of the differences in shades together with the different textures you may notice. However, the base layer is the lightest and most dominant color in the image. If we look closely, this color here between the stripes is the base layer. You can actually see traces of this color across the entire image except for a few areas like this section here. Now let's begin. So we apply this color across the entire drawing except for the few areas where it is absent. Notice the circular motions being used. This is necessary to avoid having any visible start and stop areas. Also, always remember to layer very lightly, applying very little pressure. This will add up to the realistic look we want to achieve in the end. Now once completed, we blend the base layer. This is one of the major differences with regards to the other colored pencil layering techniques you may already know. Blending the base layer is done with a solvent, so I apply the solvent to the base layer until I have a smooth and even look. Blending the base layer helps to create a solid foundation for the subsequent layers and helps make the final drawing look a lot more realistic. Blending is done in a similar way to shading, moving in circular or elliptical motions. After blending the base layer, we move on to shade in the subsequent layers. We shade from the lightest to the darkest color when layering. Now the base layer, as I said, is already the lightest color, so we keep shading progressively till we get to the darkest layer, and that's what you see me do here. I'm shading with red, more specifically poppy red, which covers a large part of the image. After, I moved on to shade with crimson red, which is darker than the previous color, poppy red. All along, we need to study our reference carefully to know where exactly to shade these colors. I then moved on to dark brown, which is also darker than the previous color. At this stage, you can tell the drawing looks very unfinished and unrealistic compared to the reference, but we need to be patient because it will all come together in the end. Now that we have all our layers shaded, we blend again with the solvent. At this point, I think it's relevant to point out the importance of your choice of paper when using this technique. The preferred choice of paper is one that is moderately rough. That is, one that has a moderately rough surface. That's the type of paper that's going to accept enough layers and blending with the solvent. You can use the Q-tip to blend out the smaller regions. In the absence of Q-tips, you can use smaller sized brushes for the same purpose. After blending, we go in with the same colored pencils again just to redefine a few areas before moving on to do the details. Now, one advantage of blending with the solvent is its ability to retain vibrance and make subsequent layering very easy. So at this stage, I'm just looking at my reference and layering accordingly. Like I said, using the same colored pencils I used before blending. One other advantage of this technique is that it saves you a lot of time. Now, you still need to be patient because it still takes time, much like any other realistic drawing. But compared to other methods of layering and blending, this significantly saves you much more time while providing a more realistic look. So the bright area here is actually pink and not plain white. So much like the rest of the drawing, I layered with pink and then blended it out with a solvent. You need to pay close attention to such areas because they can be quite deceptive. Areas that appear white but upon close look actually end up being made up of other colors, and pink is usually the culprit. So I shaded the stalk using the same principles of layering and blending. Before moving on to do the details, which are the tiny spots on the body of the fruit, I used the white colored pencil and the white gel pen for this. In areas where the spots were really bright, I used the white gel pen, and for the not so bright areas, I used the white colored pencils. So the principles to keep in mind are quite simple and straightforward. First, we need to identify our base layer and then layer evenly. After, we blend out the base layer and then shade in the subsequent layers. We then blend, adjust a few areas before applying the details. And like I always do with my artworks, I went over to add in a few finishing touches. Throughout the entire process, you can always go back to reinforce areas which require a few corrections. Now, this principle of layering and blending can be applied to any type of colored pencil drawing, except for portrait drawings where I use a slightly different approach. Like I said earlier, if you are new to colored pencil art or probably an intermediate learner, you may want to check out my free guide on the basics of realistic colored pencil art. It contains all the basic techniques and materials you need to make realistic looking artworks. It's absolutely free and the link would be in the description. If you want to know more about layering, check out this video right here. See you in the next one. Have a wonderful day and don't forget to continue drawing.